here's another example of where it may be beneficial to, before we write our givens, draw the two triangles separately. And so that's what I've done. I've traced them and I've drawn them separately just so that we can see some different things a little bit easier in our diagram. Remember, there's pros and cons though about drawing these separately, as we've talked about in a previous video. So I'm going to begin, like any proof, with my givens. So I've started with those. Notice too, I've added the tick marks to my separately drawn triangles as well, so I can see what I have matched up. And so I have, in this case, an angle and a side matched up. So there's a third part I'm going to need in order to prove the triangles are congruent to each other. Remember, even though we're trying to prove parts are congruent to each other in these proofs, I still need to first prove the triangles are congruent. And so, having drawn the triangles separately, it may be hard to see what other tick mark I can add, but looking back at the original diagram, I can see that they share something. Now, we're used to seeing the reflexive property as an example when two triangles share a side. However, it's also true that if two triangles share an angle, that can also be because of the reflexive property for why it's congruent. And so in this case, I can see in my original diagram, and this is where it's not, I guess, good to draw them separately, I can see that both triangles have angle C in common. They both share that. And so what I'm going to add then for step 3 is that angle C is congruent to angle C because of the reflexive property. Taking a look at the diagrams then, I can see that I now have the two triangles congruent to each other because of angle, side, angle. I have two angles and the side in between them. Notice I had to write my own triangle congruency statement, and be careful, just make sure that things match up in the right order, since this time they did not give us that statement. Finally then, so that's all old stuff. We've been doing that all along. My one additional step now when I'm trying to prove that two parts are congruent to each other is I'm going to say that angle A and angle D are congruent because of Cpctc, which stands for corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. In other words, once I've proven that two triangles are congruent, which I've done, all this old stuff, all their individual parts match up as well. So we do what we've always done. We've proven triangles are congruent, but then if I want to get their parts congruent, I add one extra step, and I say that the reason I know those parts are congruent is because of Cpctc. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent.